knitters, welcome to episode 191 of the Knitty McPurly podcast. I'm your host, Devin If you want to find me online, I'm at KnittyMcPurly.com. I am Knitty McPurly on Instagram, and if you want to email me, I am Devin at KnittyMcPurly.com. Thumbs up, subscribe, all the stuff. Welcome if you are new. Thank you so much for joining me. It has been quite a week. My kids go back to school next week, and that is crazy. Oh my gosh. My husband and I are driving my oldest daughter to college on Thursday, and that's crazy. I don't even know how we got here. It's no small thing to drop your child off at college, and I really didn't realize it until I was in the moment right now. But September is also gearing up to be a little bit crazy at our house, so who knows? Lots of travel. It's going to be good. My good friend is turning 60 this month, end of the month, and we're going on a little girls' trip to celebrate. And I was thinking I wanted to knit her something, and it needs to be an accessory, something that I think that she would like and that would be doable for me. So I thought I might make her a pair of cotton candy mitts. This is a pattern that is on my website. It's available for free. It's a bulky mitten pattern, and I have made a bunch of these. They make really good gifts. I love them. I love wearing them. My daughter has a pair that are in the car. She uses them when she scrapes the ice off the car. And I've given a bunch of them as gifts. The shorter pair you can make with one skein, but you need two skeins if you want to knit the larger pair because they go about to here. So I think I'm going to make her a long pair probably in the Berlin bulky. I haven't decided on a color yet, but that is something that I'm going to cast on soon because her birthday is in about a month. So if you're looking for a gift pattern, this is a great little free pattern. Okay, progress and shop news. How many of you follow Young Folk Knits? The lady behind that, her name is Casey, and I just met her this past week because she's doing a Mosaic Mayhem knit along. I'll link her podcast down below. If you haven't seen it, I had not seen it. I had never even heard of it because I live under a rock. Thank goodness you guys text me and message me and say, hey, Devin, this person mentioned you, because otherwise I would never know. But I knew somebody had talked about me because it was like I was getting constant orders and I'm like, somebody out there saying something. But she actually reached out to me because she's doing this mosaic knit along, and she featured my faux set crop, which I am wearing today. I'm wearing it with my double gauze dress that I made a couple years back. This dress shows up in a lot of pictures because it looks great with the faux set. The faux set looks great with the dress, in my humble opinion. And this one is so neutral. It goes with the one that's in my pictures. Plus this one, which is knit with Bosque, Poirot, and Morel. Anyway, the faux set uses both mosaic knitting and stranded colorwork, both forms of colorwork, and it has bobbles. I know many of you have knit faux sets before. There's 2 rows of bobbles. This one is in Poirot, so it's a little bit hard to see. This one in Morel you can see. Sometimes people leave the bobbles off, which you can totally do because a bobble is just worked in on one stitch and you can just knit it if you want to skip them. I personally love the bobbles. I would love to do a sweater that's just super bobbly. Love them. Love bobbles. Anyway, Casey of Young Folk Knits. I keep wanting to call it Young Blood Knits because this is how my brain works, folks. Things just woo. Anyway, is hosting this mosaic knit along, and so she featured my sweater along with many, many other mosaic patterns on her podcast. If you want to join in on her knit along, it runs from September 1st to December 31st, and you can post the hashtag. I know how to post hashtags on Instagram. I don't know how to do it on Ravelry, but she said you do it either on Instagram or Ravelry, and it's hashtag YFK for Young Folk Knits Mosaic Mayhem Cal. And it's a super laid back knit along. You don't even have to finish the object that you're working on. You just have to work on a mosaic pattern between September 1st and December 31st and put a picture either on Instagram or Ravelry to be considered for prizes. So it's a pretty good knit along. If I don't know if you have to cast on a new pattern or if you could work on one that you've already started, that I'm not exactly sure. You'd have to go and watch her podcast for that. But I thought Casey, was adorable and just very, very sweet. When she reached out to me, she was very sweet. She's like the opposite of me. She's very domestic. She and her family live on like a farm in Arkansas, and they have bees and animals, and they do very kind of earthy, natural kind of stuff. And like, I would love to live that life. I just don't. I live in Northern Virginia and things are just a little bit different here. But I thought she was delightful and I was glad to meet her. So if you want to participate in that knit along, you can work on any mosaic pattern or cast on any mosaic pattern. I don't know. If you want to do the faux set, I know many of you have already knit a faux set, but the pattern is on sale right now. I knocked $1 off the price if you want to go pick up that pattern. Yeah. Also, there is more of August color of the month in the shop. It had sold out in Frankfurt fingering and in the sock sets, and so I popped some more of those back in the shop. Those will be available all of August if you want to go and grab one of those. Merdogs. People have had a renewed resurgence of love for the Merdogs since we now have Sparkle Dogs and the Merdog magnets. So you can get the Merdog as a regular sticker, a sparkle sticker, a magnet, or an enamel pin over in the shop if you love Merdogs as much as me, which who wouldn't? Everyone loves Merdogs. They're so great. Also, it's just so many things today. The Porch Balm, I only have it available in the 1/2 ounce stick currently, but I do have quite a few of them left, and I knocked $2 off of the price of each of those sticks because I have to make room for the new fall balm that is coming up soon. So if you need another stick of the Porch hand balm, it's a very fresh floral scent that's kind of geranium, lilac, lavendery. It's a beautiful, beautiful scent. I have heard from people that they really love it. So if you need a stick of that, go and pop that in your cart. And while you're there, you can use the code SWEATERWEATHER to get 20% off a sweater quantity of yarn. And a sweater quantity is 3 full skeins of whatever you want. They don't have to technically go together if you're just in the market for 3 skeins, but the idea is if you're casting on sweaters for fall, I would love for you to consider Knitty McPurly yarn. And if you wanted to look at color cards, then you'd be able to see all the different colors at any given time, and you can kind of put the colors together and see how they play together. All right, that is the end of my sales pitch. Thank you so much for listening to it. So I don't watch a lot of knitting podcasts because I tend to like second guess myself, and I feel less than. It's so easy to feel less than on YouTube. And so when I go watch other people's podcasts, I think, am I doing it okay? Is this okay? And it's all fine. Why do I do that? I don't know. It's crazy. All right, moving right along to the topic of the week. We are on week 5 of the sweater project. I'm calling this the Valentine sweater because that is the color that I'm using. Okay, so I just drew this little picture to give you an idea of what I did on the front of the sweater. So you can see in the middle of the neck is the bind off. And then going up from there are, it makes kind of a trapezoid neck shape. Those are the decreases. And then that little triangle on the front, and there's one on the other side too, I just didn't draw it. Those are the short rows that give you the shoulder drop. So I did that on the front. Now on the back, I did the exact same thing. So I had 40 stitches here, 48 stitches here, 40 stitches here. And then I was going to increase by 2 going this way so that my armhole had just a little bit of shaping, not very much. But with the 48 stitches in the front, I bound off 24 in the middle and then decreased 12 here and decreased 12 here. Now in the back, I knit higher and I bound off 36 stitches here, and then I decreased 6, decreased 6. And then I did the exact same short rows on the 2 back pieces that I did on the front. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I did that on the front, on this side, and in the back. So that's where I was. And last week I showed it to you and it was super floppy and crazy because that's how it looks. That's how a bottom-up sweater looks before you join the armholes. So when I got here, I had live stitches on the fronts and the backs. And when you have 2 sets of live stitches, you've got lots of options for how you want to join them. If you want it to look seamless, you can Kitchener them. There are other grafting methods that you can use to make it look seamless that are not named after really bad dudes like Lord Kitchener. We've talked about him in a past episode, but whatever, who cares? It doesn't matter. I personally love a 3-needle bind off because when you do a 3-needle bind off from the right side, what you end up with is an exposed seam and it just looks so good. So I'll show you that. I don't want to give away too much because, so there is my 3-needle bind off and I did that from the right side. And you can kind of see the short rows there. See that little point? When it's blocked and on, it will be drapier. But right now, because it's a little bit stiff and not blocked yet, you kind of see the point where the short rows are. So I put that on, and here my husband took this picture of me, and everything's, you know, it looks better because it's sewn up on the sides, but the neck is way bigger than I want it, and on the sides it's kind of curling in a little bit. So that's where I was. So I went ahead and did the neck next. I went around the neck hole and I picked up 2 stitches for every 3 sweater stitches. And you know, you've got bind off here, you've got increases. So there's all different sort of stitches, but I picked up 2 of every 3. And it ended up looking like this. And I took a little video of it. I was dog sitting my friend's dog, different dog than the one that I walked. But anyway, here is how that looked. Hey knitters, I'm at my neighbor's house because I'm watching their dog. Look how cute he is. Isn't he adorable? So this is how far I have gotten on the neckline. You can see it's not very deep. And in the back, it has flayed out a little because I think I just picked up too many stitches. I'm not happy with the way that it looks. It is too big, it's too square. I just really don't like it. I hated it. It was terrible. It was floppy, the neck hole was too big, I just didn't like it at all. So I pulled it out and on my next try, I picked up every other stitch. So I picked up 1 stitch for every 2 sweater stitches. And that came out amazing. I'm so, so happy. Now, as I hold it up, it looks a little bit puckery right there, but that will block out. It'll block out, you guys, don't worry. So you can see that the back comes up a little bit higher than the front. Can I put this on? Maybe I can put this on and you can see. Okay, sorry, I've got my needles here and I don't want them to come undone. Now it looks a little boxy right now and there's a little bit of pucker, but it will block out, don't worry. The neck is exactly what I want. It looks just exactly the way that I want it to look. And I've got my exposed seam here. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the sleeve. And again, it looks wrong, and I'm trying not to stretch it because I don't want to pull the stitches off the needles, and it's on a 16-inch needle. But this will end up being a nice drop sleeve, and it'll be a nice baggy sleeve and get tight at the wrist. So let me show you my schematic again and talk to you about what I did for the sleeves. Now, I could have said my sleeve opening is 12 inches in the front, meaning that it's a 24-inch circumference at the top of the sleeve opening. So how many stitches do I need? Well, that would be 24 times 6, which is 84 plus 84, 168 stitches. Wow, I did that really quick. Hopefully I did it right. So what I technically need is 168 stitches. Now, I didn't even do that. What I did was I picked up 2 stitches for every 3 stitches, every 3 sweater stitches, and I'm just gonna hope for the best because that's just how I roll. If you want to do the math like I just did super easily and quickly, should have just done it. Could go back and check now to see if I had done 168 or thereabouts. Probably won't, maybe I will. Anyway, picked up the stitches around the armhole, and then I worked some short rows. Now, this is a drop sleeve sweater. They were not totally necessary. If you look at the schematic, look at the top of the sleeve and look at the bottom of the sleeve. Do you see how the top is a little bit longer? So I figured we'll give that an inch, and I'm just guessing, like I'm saying, well, we'll say that the bottom of the sleeve is maybe 19, and I didn't measure it, though I could have, and the top of the sleeve is 20. So I worked 1, 2, 3, 4 short rows just along the top and just not in the bottom to make the top of the sleeve just slightly longer than the bottom. It's a step that you can totally skip, totally skippable step, but I just threw them in there because why not? And then I figured out how much decreasing I would need to do to get to the circumference that I want in the end. So I'm going to start at my 24-inch circumference, and I'm going to go down to a 14-inch circumference here before I knit the cuff of the sweater. So that's 10 inches decreased. So to decrease 10 inches, that's 60 stitches because it's 6 stitches per inch, right? So I'm going to be decreasing 60 stitches over 19 inches of sleeve. So 8, now we're talking rows when we have to say, well, over how many rows is 19 inches? So 8 rows equals 1 inch. 8 times 19 is about 152 rows, or rounds. Rounds, they're not rows, they're rounds. So over 152 rounds, if I decrease 2 stitches on every decrease, then I need 30 decrease rounds to get to the 14 inches. Are you with me so far? So I have to say, well, how many rounds should I work in between the decreases so that it fits? So how many 30s fit in 152? About 5, right? Because 5 times 30 is 150. So what that means is every 5th round, I'm going to decrease. So that is the pattern of decreases that I am working right here. So I'm gonna knit 4 and then decrease, and I will continue to do that to the end of the sleeve. And at that point, I'm going to, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I probably will just switch to a smaller needle and do my ribbing for the cuff, because I do want the cuff to fit. Oh my gosh, I'm hot. I do want the cuff to fit. Whew. 2 sweaters is too hot in August. Oh my gosh. All right, moving right along to the comments section. Sharon Hoyt says, now I'm picturing your August colorway for the color work in Cheryl's Wise Owl Knits Wildflower Tee with one of the tonals as the main color. That would be super pretty. I bet that would be pretty, fantasy knitting. And I'm thinking I'd rather not travel to Mexico. And I was like, if a country might take my knitting, I think I'm just not gonna go there. Like, that's like, you've ruled yourself out. You lost my business if you steal my knitting or my needles. That's really that's painful. Julie Brown says, I love that you support other small designers and crafters. The Wise Owl Knits cable sweater was jaw-dropping. I totally agree. I think this sweater is gorgeous. B. Naz says, your problem with the short rows on the second shoulder could have been me while making the Diggory tee. I had to really concentrate because it just felt wrong, because your triangle in the shoulder is bigger here and smaller here. And if you make it like that, then that's not right. You're gonna have extra boxiness. As to the Indian Lake Artisan needles, I just bought a small sized interchangeable kit in June of 2023, and they've gotten a lot of use. I got the composite ones because I have a tendency to bend my needles. I don't feel like I have a death grip on them, but maybe I do. Anyway, I love them. I too tend to be a loose knitter and struggle to get gauge. Often now I can use the recommended needle size and get gauge. That is super helpful information. For those of us who are loose knitters, I mean, I tend to knit pretty much exclusively with metal needles, and it never occurred to me to, see, I tried so hard not to drop stitches. Not that it's a big deal. I'm just gonna rethread them right now. I knit pretty much exclusively with the metal needles, and it makes me feel like I really should try wooden ones. The only time I knit with wooden is when they're double points. But I really should get some slicker wood needles. You know, like there's a lot of them that are real grippy that I don't like. I want the yarn to slide. But yeah, maybe I should try some of these. She says, I don't really have a knitting story, but maybe a suggestion for a compilation knitting story. A few months ago, we had no program for our Fiber Guild meeting, so we all shared how we began our craft journey. Everyone stood and told their story, learning from mom, grandma, aunt, friend, YouTube, yarn shop. May I challenge anyone who reads this comment to share their how I learned story. Devin, how did you learn? She says, I learned to knit in my early 30s from a very dear friend. I tell her to this day that she created a monster and thank her each time I say it. I've told this story a couple times on this podcast and on other podcasts. I'll just say that I learned how to knit when I was pregnant with my son, and my friend Lisa taught me how to knit. Hi, Lisa. I don't know if Lisa watches the podcast. She's a busy lady, but she recently texted me to ask a knitting question, and I was like, oh, how the turntables have turned. I was like, that's just so crazy that here you are asking me a knitting question when she's the one who taught me how to knit. And when she taught me, I knew I was going to obsess over it because I wanted to knit my entire life. My whole life I wanted to knit. And I would see knitted things and I wanted to do them, but no one knew how. And I couldn't teach myself from a book. I couldn't figure it out, the picture with the yarn. I just couldn't do it. And so I was really grateful when she taught me, and I have knit obsessively since then. The Knitting Wanderer says, I also like listening to Brett, and I think a Rachel vest sounds so good. I may need to add that to my upcoming knitting list. I absolutely love the dimension that hand-dyed tonals give to projects, especially garments. Me too, absolutely. I'm actually turned off by most commercially dyed solids now, but I cringe at the cost of gift knitting with some of the hand-dyed yarns that I drool over. Okay, so yes, I don't like machine dyed yarn. I don't like it. It's too uniform, it's too perfect. I like the imperfections. I love tonality. It just looks so much better. But if I am gift knitting, depending on the recipient, especially if it's for a baby, I tend to use, and I just knit Maggie a whole bunch of baby stuff out of Knitty McPurly yarn, but I have an employee discount though. But seriously, no, we do a lot of gift knitting with regular, Hobby Lobby yarn. We totally do that. But I get it. Some people, if they're really knit worthy, then they're worthy of the good yarn, but not everyone is. because they don't necessarily know how to take care of it. When I knit for my friend who's turning 60, I'm going to use Knitty McPurly yarn because they're mittens and she'll wear them when she takes the dog for walks, but they're not going to see a lot of washing machine action. So Emily over at Knock Knit said, I am taking deep breaths and not asking about the Jovis duster, even though you showed us that gorgeous picture of yourself in it. Also, I would totally go to a Mexican jail over knitting as long as I got to bring my knitting. Thank you for another great episode. Thank you so much, Emily. That is awesome. I love it. All right, moving right along to knitting fantasies. Speaking of vests, check out this adorable Bestie Vestie by Vanessa Smith, who is new to me. I love this vest. It is so cute. I'm just looking at these pictures and these are two different ones. So she has a short version and then she has one that she knit a little bit longer. So cute. This is adorable. It is DK weight. And she held a DK with a mohair and still called it a DK, which is fair enough. Whatever gauge you get, that totally works. This vest comes in 13 sizes. I really respect her for knitting it twice in the exact same color. That's pretty good. But it's so cute with that cable in the front and there's just shaping everywhere. So, so pretty. My second pick is the Elizabeth sweater knit by Siv. And she is from Norway, but this pattern is in English. This is available on Etsy. And the materials it calls for is 1 thread of Drops Air knit together with 1 thread of mohair. So I looked up Drops Air. And this is what's called a blow yarn. You're probably familiar with this. It says it's made of soft baby alpaca and cozy merino wool. This quality has a unique construction where instead of spinning, the fibers of baby alpaca and merino wool are blown into a tube together. Garments made of this yarn are 30 to 35% lighter than those made with conventional spun yarns of the same thickness. So that is really cool. Where can you buy Drops? Is that only available in Europe? Can we get that in the US? I don't even know. But it's a really interesting yarn. But I just thought this was so pretty with the lace and the texture. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous sweater. Really, really pretty. And this is an Aran/worsted weight yarn, that Drops yarn that I talked about. All right, moving right along to everyone's favorite segment. So here's what happened. This is where we share our knitting stories, where we share our oral tradition. If you have a knitting story, or if you just want to talk about your fiber journey, that would be amazing. I would love to share it on the podcast. Send it to me, Devin at KnittyMcPurly.com. You can take a video, you can type it out and I'll read it for you. You can send an audio recording, whatever. We would love to share your story on the podcast. Today's story comes from a lovely podcast watcher named Kathy. Hi, Kathy. She says, this isn't really a knitting story, which is fine. I just love that she wanted to share it. She says, but rather an observation on how knitting philosophy applies to life. Like all couples, my husband and I have many things in common, but differ in some ways. He has always been a planner, faithfully keeping his to-do list in his day timer, while I am more of the what do I feel like doing today type. We have our own hobbies to help deal with the stresses of life. I knit, crochet, sew, spin, read, and cook. His activities have included hunting, fishing, running, weightlifting, and triathlons. Over the years, I've observed that with the exception of hunting, all of his activities have been oriented around some competition or event. For example, if he wasn't training for a marathon or a triathlon, he wouldn't have running on his schedule. Similarly, he only fishes when there is a bass tournament. I almost said a base tournament. Was he fishing for bases? Recently, when he was quite stressed out about a change at work, I suggested that he go fishing somewhere for the afternoon and enjoy the fresh air and the sunshine. His response was that he would just get bored. For a few minutes, it baffled me how fishing during a tournament versus fishing on its own were any different. Then it occurred to me, he is a product fisherman, not a process fisherman. When I had that thought, something must have changed in my facial expression because he commented that he could tell I had something to say. I then explained the two different approaches to knitting and pointed out how he was a product person and I was a process person. That little revelation lightened the mood for a few minutes and hopefully eased a little of his stress. Now that I showed him how knitting philosophy applies to life, he will occasionally try to find analogies with fishing. The attempts haven't quite hit the mark, but I'll let him keep trying. It's not a competition after all. That was awesome, Kathy. So good. And that's really true. I don't know if I'm a product knitter or a process knitter. I feel like I am both. Can I be both? I think I claim both for a lot of things. Like how I'm an introverted extrovert. Like I knit for the product, but I enjoy the process. I'd have to say if I were gonna pick one, I'd say I'm a product knitter, but I do enjoy the process and I often will choose a pattern that has a process that I'm in the mood for. So what are you? Are you a process knitter or are you a product knitter? It's an interesting question. I hope you have a wonderful week. I will see you here again next week after school starts. Oh my gosh, crazy. See you then. Bye.